So just a little bit about me. I'm Jennifer Sabin. I've been with Harmony for 16 years now. I've held multiple roles. I started out as an English teacher. I've taught multiple things too, not just English. I also was a GT teacher. I taught some ESL. I taught some SPED stuff. I taught character ed, just lots of stuff. I was a dean of student culture for many years. I was also a district testing coordinator, a dean of academics, and then I've been at central office. I think this is going on my 9th year, 10th year, I'm not sure, at central office. And I am currently the director of student safety and behavioral counseling. So not only have I held all those roles, I was also a Harmony parent. So this little picture here is actually, the little blonde one is my daughter. She started at Harmony Exploration. She was the first kindergarten class there. So I have experience all around Harmony. She's a senior now, just how long it's been. So today we're going to talk about student boundaries. We're going to talk about physical contact. We're going to talk about verbal communications. We're going to touch on social media, discrimination, parent interactions, bullying, school safety, and then I'll take some questions at the end. I know some of the stuff you may have just heard from Mr. Yazgeldi, but I want to say if you're hearing it twice, that means it's super important and we're really trying to drive that home. So just want to put that out there. So our mission here at Harmony is to prepare each student for higher education by providing a safe, caring, and collaborative atmosphere using a quality, student-centered educational model with a strong emphasis on science, technology, engineering, and math. With that being said, we also have a Texas Educator Code of Ethics. So what that says is that the Texas educator will comply with standard practices and ethical conduct towards students, professional colleagues, school officials, parents, and members of the community, and will safeguard academic freedom. They will respect and obey the law, demonstrate personal integrity, and exemplify honesty. Extend just and equitable treatment to all members of the profession. Measure success by the progress of each student toward realization of his or her potential as an effective citizen. And cooperate with parents and others to improve the public schools of the community. So that's what the Harmony vision, that's what the state tells us we have to do. And then for student boundaries, our policy says the educator will maintain appropriate professional educator-student relationships and boundaries based on a reasonably prudent educator standard. So my goal today is to tell you what that means. So we start with physical contact. We have a horrible example here, right? And one that would be acceptable. But I want to ask you guys is, when is it okay to put your hands on a student? Is it ever okay to put your hands on a student? Never. Okay, I see one. Anyone else? Greeting. Okay, maybe shaking a hand, a high five. Depends. Okay, anyone else? Do not. No, I usually ask before in any case. Okay. So the time that you are always able to put your hands on a student is for safety purposes. Okay. So if you have a student that is about to step out in front of traffic and you grab them, you're not going to get in trouble for that. You have just saved that student's life. Okay. But other than that, I would avoid it. I do like that you guys put greetings, and I like that you ask. We have some videos, and I think I know you had Dr. Anderson present to you guys, I think yesterday, and I don't know if he showed you the video, but he has a really great one where the teacher has pictures on the outside of her room and the student will point to it, and they'll either shake hands, they might elbow bump, they might fist bump, or they just do a dance, or they might high five, but the kid gets to choose. And so that's a form of physical contact that's okay, because the student is requesting it. But other than that, I would avoid it, right? Unless it's a safety issue. So our policy states the educator will not intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly engage in physical mistreatment, neglect, or abuse of a student or minor. Okay. So giving those handshakes, those high fives, that's fine. That's not negligent. That's not mistreatment. That's actually, that's common for us even as adults to do that. So it is okay to do that with students. And the educator will not intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly treat a student or minor in a manner that adversely affects or endangers the learning, physical health, mental health, or safety of the student or minor. And unwanted touches can definitely affect that, right? If someone is walking up and grabbing a student from behind for no reason, that's going to make that kid very uncomfortable. There's no purpose, there's no reason for it. So if you're doing something like that, you're adversely affecting the learning environment. So don't do it. So we do have a case study. A sixth grade teacher is walking with his class to the computer lab. On the way to the lab, the teacher observes a seventh grade boy making faces at one of his friends outside of the classroom. The teacher asks the boy to stop making faces, but the student ignores the teacher and continues making faces outside of the classroom towards his friend. The teacher then aggressively grabs the seventh grade student's shoulder and points him in the direction to go to his class. Did the teacher use an appropriate action towards the seventh grade student? I see heads shaking no. Does anyone think this is appropriate? No. Okay. Yeah, I agree. Now, if I had taken out that word aggressively and grab, if I said that the teacher gently pushed the student, maybe not push isn't a good word either, but gently guided the student towards, would that be considered appropriate? This is a trick question. It depends on the relationship with the teacher and the student. So if you have a student that you already don't get along with and you touch them in any manner, they're going to say that you assaulted them. If you know the student very well, let's say it's a SPED student and it's very hard to get their attention, but by patting them on the shoulder, they will pay attention and that will focus them and get them on the way, then that's fine. But you have to have that relationship. You have to know that student, okay? So I put, how should the teacher have handled this situation? I kind of answered that for you, but does anyone else have any other ideas? Now, normally when I ask this question, I get a lot of people say, go to your admin, tell them, have them come assist, which that could be. I love this gently redirect, maybe warning and use the walkie-talkie. Absolutely. Give direction a couple times. Perfect. Yeah, there's lots of ways you could do it instead of aggressively grabbing someone, right? You don't want anyone aggressively grabbing you. That's going to make you defensive, right? It would do the exact same thing to a child. So now we're going to talk about verbal communications. And I love this little picture in the middle. It says, no significant learning can occur without a significant relationship. And this goes back to exactly what I was talking about before. You have to know your students and you have to have a relationship with them. So the way you communicate with them will have an effect on the way they respond to you, the way they take in your teaching, and the way they learn from you. So our policy says the educator will refrain from inappropriate communication with a student or minor, including but not limited to electronic communication such as a cell phone, text messaging, email, instant messaging, blogging, or other social network communication. The educator will not solicit or engage in sexual conduct or a romantic relationship with a student or minor. You would think that this is common sense, right? But unfortunately, we see every day on the news of an educator having an inappropriate relationship with a student. Just do not, okay? I think that goes without saying, right? So we're going to talk about some do's and some don'ts with verbal communication. Don't use sarcasm, all right? Just because you think that they're going to understand that what you say is sarcasm, you can't take that for granted. You might think you're being funny and you're being silly with the student. You might think that that's a way of building a relationship with them, and they're taking it to heart and they don't understand that you're being sarcastic with them. So just avoid it altogether. Don't make comments about appearance, right? You might feel like that's a good way to build rapport as well, but a kid can take that wrong, right? And it's another thing about those relationship building, right? I can have, maybe I have a female teacher that works next door. She has a classroom next door to me, and we've been talking about different types of outfits and dresses. And I come in one day and she goes, "Oh, that is so pretty. I love that." I'm not going to take offense to that, right? Because we have that relationship that we've been talking about clothes, and I'm not going to take it wrong. But if I'm walking down the street and someone walks up and says, "Oh, I love that dress," and it's a man that's very scary looking to me, right? I'm going to be afraid. I'm not going to know, and I'm not going to probably take that in the way that hopefully he intended it on with good things, but I don't know that because I don't have that relationship with him, right? So just don't make comments about their appearance. Don't ridicule, embarrass, or put students down. This kind of goes back into sarcasm. And sometimes what I have seen is when kids are acting up, teachers try to put them in place by doing this and don't, right? You're destroying any relationship you have with a kid when you use this method. So now some do's. Keep all communication professional. It kind of goes without saying, right? Make positive comments about classwork and classroom behavior. So we do want you to praise those kids, just not about their appearance, right? So talk to them about, wow, you turned in all your work. Good job. Wow, you got to class on time. Great job, right? Sometimes you have to find stuff to praise them about, but make sure that you're giving them those positive comments and that positive feedback. So, of course, the golden rule, treat students the way you expect to be treated, right? If you don't want to be yelled at, don't yell at your kids, right? Do you yell at your coworkers? I sure hope not. But if you wouldn't react, I don't know what has ever put in our mind that yelling at a child is going to have a positive effect, right? It doesn't have a positive effect on adults. Why we think it's okay to yell at students. Now, there may be times in an emergency where you're yelling to get attention. I see that fine. But raising your voice otherwise, there is absolutely no need for that. So another case study. An 11th grade math teacher was reported by several students looking at girls in a creepy way. The student stated that when a girl bent over to pick up a pencil, that they saw the teacher looking at the girl's butt and raising his eyebrows. Another student reported that when they were in a room alone with the teacher, he made the comment, "If you were older, I would date you." The teacher states that the comment was harmless and he was only trying to build rapport with the student, and that the door remained open at all times when speaking with a student in his classroom. So, what concerns are found within this case? Do we see any concerns? Is this okay? Sexual harassment? Yep. Sexual abuse could be the teacher's comments, malicious acts. Okay. Not okay. Yeah. So for sure, you should never tell a student that you would date them in a different situation, right? That is inappropriate, and that is absolutely could be considered grooming, which grooming is the beginning stages of that sexual misconduct with students. So we want to stay away from that altogether. The girls bending over and him raising his eyebrows, it could have been an accident, right? It could have been a coincidence. Maybe he wasn't looking and the eyebrows just got raised, or maybe he's raising them because what are they doing, right? That one's could be left up to interpretation. Obviously, if he's doing it in a suggestive way, it should not have been done. And he probably doesn't have a good rapport with these girls, right? If this was a truly innocent, just glance over and raise eyebrow, and he has a great rapport with these girls, they probably wouldn't think anything about it. But obviously, he's creepy. He said creepy things to them. So a simple gesture as raising eyebrows is going to cause alarm. Now it says they say that he was looking at her bottom. If he was, he probably shouldn't have been, right? But having a good relationship with your students, and avoiding all of this stuff, right? So, we put, do you believe this was an appropriate way to build rapport with the students? Why or why not? I can already tell by all of your answers, you all agree that this is a bad way to build rapport. So good job. It is very disturbing. So now we're going to talk about social media. The hard part about social media is it changes all the time, right? I don't remember how long I've been doing this presentation, but I've already had to change this slide multiple times to add additional social media icons to it. So right now, as a mother and an educator, it is kind of the bane of our existence. It can do some great things, but also can cause great harm. So let's talk about social media. So our policy regarding friending students on social media is you do not accept students as friends on personal social networking sites. And see, it says personal, and I'll talk about this a little further. Decline any student-initiated friend requests. Friend requests from former students who no longer attend the school or who have reached the age of 18 may be accepted. So if you have a kid that they've already graduated, it's okay. It says reach the age of 18. I would still wait until the kid has graduated. Okay. I know that I have a lot of former students that I am friends with on private social media. And because of that, I do have a warning here. If they still have siblings that are in your school, I would be very careful with that. I also learned that be very careful with friending parents. When I was teaching, I was also the chess coach. And so I had a parent that went with me to all of the chess competitions. And so that parent friended me on Facebook, and I thought, no big deal, that's fine. And then all of a sudden I had her kids come in and say, hey, Miss Saban, I see that you had a fishing tournament this weekend, or you went fishing, and how was that? And, making comments about posts that I had made. And that, of course, is definitely not okay. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're allowing parents or sibling or not, or students that have siblings that are younger, when you're allowing to friend them. Do not initiate online friendships with students. Do not be the one to reach out. This is where a lot of that grooming comes in as well, as it starts on social media. So important HPS policy points. If an employee uses electronic media to communicate with students, it must always be within the scope of employees' professional responsibilities, matters relating to classwork, homework, etc. No communication between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Okay, there's no need to contact a kid between those hours at all. Employees shall not solicit or engage in sexual conduct or a romantic relationship with a student. Now, before we get into this, I do want to say all of this is talking about personal sites. Is it okay to have, like, say, a classroom site? So maybe you have a club after school. Like I just said, I had a chess club. Would it be okay for me to have a chess club Facebook page? Maybe a Gmail group? No. If you're doing it in the scope of school, if you're doing the scope of a purpose, it is okay. You're not putting any of your private information. You're not leading anything to private information. It is a good way to communicate with kids. I know that I told you guys I was an English teacher. So before we went out for the summer, I had a group called Mrs. Saban's Readers. And so I would post books and book reviews for my students to read. And I would allow them to post books and book reviews as well for their peers. So it was in a scope of teaching, and it did not go beyond, there was no personal stuff there at all. I did not communicate with them between 10 and 6. I didn't do any personal messages through it. It was just an information page for them. I know multiple schools do things like that. I told you guys my daughter's a senior right now. She's on the drill team, and they have a page as well that they promote anytime they're doing fundraisers. They put it on there. anything they're doing like that, they use their Facebook page. So it can be used, but you just have to be careful, right? Again, none of those private messages sent through that, nothing inviting them to friend you on your personal page, okay? I like this. To remain professional, I first ask for permission if the school allows it. Absolutely, absolutely. Always talk to your admin team saying, "Hey, I would really like to do this. Do you mind?" Especially if you're putting the school's information on it, right? So I was at HSI Houston. If I was going to say HSI Houston Chess Club, I would want my admin team to agree to it because I am putting that name out there and I'm representing the school. So I would want them to approve that. Great, great comment. So we do have a case study. You receive a direct message from a student on your Instagram account. The student is requesting extra help on an assignment. The student keeps the communication fully within the scope of school-related business. What would be an appropriate method to respond to the student's request? I like that. Directing the student to the school email. Yeah. Happy to help, but not through the personal Instagram account. Great. Yeah, you're being nice to them, and you're directing them to the correct place to communicate. And I think the next day at school, I would also say, "Hey, please make sure if you need me that you were emailing me." Right? I think that would be a great. So you guys did good on that. Um, I answered this. What further steps should be taken? What else might you guys do instead of beyond just telling them in class the next day? Say talk to the student the next day and inform them. Would anyone contact the parents and say, "Hey, I got an email or a direct message from your student on Instagram. Just want to let you know." Would anyone do that? No. I don't think it's a bad idea if you, and it's a great way to build that relationship with that parent. Just say, "Hey, I want to let you know that I got an Instagram message. I directed them to my email, and just want to make sure my email is always available, but I'm not allowed to answer on Instagram. So if you guys need me, you can always contact me. Or if you um, give them your, I never liked giving them my classroom phone number just because you never know when they're going to call. But if that's something that you don't mind doing, you can do that as well. Um, that's up to you. That's a personal choice. But it is another good way to start building that rapport with that parent as well. So now we're going to talk about discrimination. So our policy on discrimination is we prohibit discrimination, including harassment on the basis of a person's race, color, gender, national origin, disability, religion, age, or any other basis prohibited by law. Okay. So you notice I don't have any discrimination do's. They're all discrimination don'ts, right? Because we just said we do not discriminate. So make sure that we don't conduct gender-specific field trips, right? Only boys can go on this field trip, only girls can go on this field trip. We don't favor students because of race, ethnicity, gender, etc. I only like teaching the girls because they pay attention better, right? You can't do that. Engage in stereotypes. And I have a whole bunch of stereotypes down here. Girls are bad at math. You come from a poor neighborhood, so you'll never do well. Oh, you're a student athlete. Jocks are so dumb. Boys aren't creative. You can't score high on math because you're white. You're too young. You will never do as well as older kids. These all are like negative, but you can also do stereotypes that sound like they're positive, but they're also negative, right? Like, oh, you're Asian, so you should be really good at math. That's putting an undue pressure on a student. That's also contributing to a stereotype. Okay. So now another case study. A calculus teacher who's male would like to take his students on an overnight intensive studying field trip. This class consists of 7 male students and 1 female student. The calculus teacher asked the female teachers in his department if they might be able to assist with chaperoning the field trip. None of the department's female teachers are available, so the calculus teacher informs the female students that she will not be able to attend the field trip. After time goes by, another teacher hears about this female student not be able to go and files a complaint to the principal. Does the teacher who filed the complaint have a valid concern? Maybe you can get help from parents. So yes, has a valid concern. And I think we're already starting. Yes, yes. Okay. I agree. There is a concern there, right? So what steps could they have been taken? I already see one, maybe help from parents. What are some other? It is definitely gender discrimination. Any ideas on how to avoid this? Reach the admin for help? Yeah, absolutely. You can contact your admin. I also think that maybe yeah, exactly. I was just about to say this, make a trip another day when someone's available. Absolutely, right? Don't punish all the kids because you don't have the correct chaperones. So do it a different time. Or yeah, maybe a parent can do it. So there are other options. Don't just say, sorry, you can't go. We're still going to go have fun, but you have to stay home. There are other options. So good job. So communicating with parents, this is the fun one. I could spend all day talking to you guys about proper communication with parents, but I won't. This is actually kind of an older picture. It's changing a little bit again, but you can see 1960, these grades are terrible, right? They're getting on to the kid, but now they're getting on to the teacher. I feel like after COVID and having the parents having the kids home, they're kind of, they sympathize with the teachers a little bit more. It's still not where it used to be, right? But what we want to do right now is so we don't get to that yelling part. So some do's and don'ts of parent communication. Don't label and name call, okay? And this, you might not be doing it in a negative way. You might be saying, your kid's one of my smartest, or they're the best, right? You're putting that unfair label. You might feel like you're being complimentary, but what if that parent has another kid and you're not saying anything positive about them? So just stick with the facts. Don't label, don't say, oh, they're one of my popular kids, or they're my smart kid, or they're kind of one of my I don't know, I can't think of anything else, but keep it just as professional as possible with that. Don't make accusations. Don't call and say your child is not paying attention. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. They don't like my class. They're not putting their best effort forth. Right? You're making accusations that we may not know the whole picture for. Right? That may be what's going on, but avoid it. Right? Don't repeat gossip. Well, I heard that your kid said she hates my class, and so that's why she's not doing their work. Right? You don't know that. You heard that. Or I hear they're not doing well because they have a new boyfriend and they're paying too much attention to their boyfriend or their girlfriend, right? You don't know that for a fact. You're just repeating what may be going on, what you've heard. Don't make absolutes. They never come to school on time. Well, that's not true, right? They never turn their homework on time. That's also not true. That's an absolute. Or they're always late to class, right? You can do it both ways. They're always arguing with me. I mean, there are good times with kids, right? That there's no absolutes with students. So some things that we can do. Listen. Now, this is probably, if you take anything away from this with parent communication, it's just listen. Sometimes when you have a very angry parent, all they want is for someone to listen to them. So do that. Just sit there and listen to what they have to say. And then afterwards, ask for solutions. Okay. It doesn't mean that you are going to take and do what their solution is, but you are going to have listened to them so they have felt heard, and you're going to ask them for their opinion. I can tell you that one of the angriest parents that I have ever come across, I had them actually, why they came to me at central office, I have no idea. So I was already at central office, and they called in with a complaint, and somehow it landed on my desk. And I answered the phone. That's all I did. It wasn't even supposed to come to me. I answered the phone, and this parent just started yelling. I was probably on the phone with them for 30 minutes, and they were just going. I didn't say anything. I listened to them, maybe just said, I see, or I hear you, or something like that here and there. And at the end, I asked for some solutions, and I said, okay, well, this is the person that you actually need to talk to, and let me get you in touch with them. And after that conversation, they told someone that I helped them more than anyone else ever helped them, and that whatever. And I was like, I didn't do a thing. I didn't do anything. I just listened, was all I did. But because I listened, they felt like I was the most helpful person in the world. So that is the best piece of advice I can give to you guys, is just listen and collaborate, right? We are a team. We are coming together to help the student. We're not here to fight parents. And sometimes, for whatever reason, we get into that, oh, I can't talk to that parent, they're so mean, or they yell at everyone, or they only take their child's side. Sometimes they just haven't ever been listened to, and no one's asked for solutions from them, and no one's really tried to collaborate. So we've got to put that effort forward. Empathize with them, right? I understand you're upset. Tell me a little bit more about that. What do you think we could do to fix that, right? Because we're better together, right? The whole purpose of us bringing these kids on is so that we can educate them, not to fight with them, not to fight with their parents. It's to educate them. So we have to have that partnership. So we work as a team to make sure that those kids are successful. Okay. Any comments or questions about that? What should we do if a parent attacks suddenly? How can we handle that situation appropriately? I'm guessing when you say attack, you mean verbally attack, right? Not physically attack. Again, just step back and say, hey, I understand you're upset. I want to hear you, but I can't hear you when you're yelling at me. So, and try to maybe take them into a private office. If you're not feeling comfortable, have someone join you. I always have someone join me if I know that the parent does have violent tendencies. And when I say violent tendencies, violent outbursts, or loud outbursts, or they get angry very easy, I always have someone in there with me. So, just you try to de-escalate, right? They're not going to de-escalate. Don't try to match them. Sometimes, we talked about this earlier, right? Yelling at kids. No one wants to be yelled at. And if you yell back, then it's just going to continue to escalate, right? You're going to have this yelling war, and everyone's going to try to be louder, and everyone's going to try to be heard. So just step back and say, I really want to, I need to help you. I want to help you. Let's calm down. Let me take that back. Don't say calm down. Never say calm down, right? Because that usually, I know if my husband tells me to calm down, that's going to escalate me 10 times. So don't say calm down, but say, I need you to bring your voice down a little bit so I can understand you. You're making a point that because you're elevated, I can't hear you. If you just say stop yelling, they're going to keep yelling. But I can't really understand you with your voice that loud. So if you bring it down a little bit, I think I'll be able to help you better. Okay. I hope that helps. Can we not report to the parents about the children's misbehavior? You absolutely can. It's all about the way you phrase it, right? If you're calling saying, hey, this is Miss Sabin, just want to call and talk to you about what's about little Johnny. I love having him in my class. He's really good at keeping his friends engaged. That can mean he talks a lot, but we're putting a really positive spin on it, right? He's really great at keeping his friends engaged. But I've been having a hard time with him paying attention, or I've had a hard time with him with outburst. I have redirected him a couple times by moving seats or walking closer to him. It works for a little bit, but not all the time. Is there something that you do at home that helps with that, right? So you're asking them for a solution, and you're not just saying, your child doesn't pay attention to my class, I can't handle them. If he keeps it going, I'm going to refer them to the dean, right? When you're doing that, you're building that conflict. You're saying it's us against you. If you don't fix this, he's going to be punished. Instead, change that around and say, I need some help. What would you do? How would you do this at home? What would you suggest that I do here? So I'm trying to get these questions. Are there any cultural behaviors or expressions among students or parents that we should know so as not to interpret them as disrespect or defiance? There are probably a lot. I think that you being as respectful as you can, I wouldn't worry about them being disrespectful to you. Anytime just saying I'm trying to help is going to assist you in whatever you're doing. We have so many different cultures at Harmony that it's really hard to say, you can say this and everyone's going to be fine, right? Because there's a lot of different ones. But you might even say, I'm trying to assist you here. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, and I want to help. Let's see. At what point should a student be sent to the office or reported to admins? So we have a whole entire student handbook. If it is a situation that is disturbing the class to the point that you cannot teach, that's when I would report it. Your admin will go over with you your classroom expectations and their discipline expectations, and let you know at what point they want them referred. I know back when I was a dean, I wanted the parent contacted first. I wanted other solutions before it got to the point of an office referral, simply because if your dean is the first one to contact the parent, then you have lost all control, right? The parent now thinks that you can't handle their kid, that you don't want to handle their kid, and that you're sending them immediately to the principal's office. So you guys making that first contact is very important, and keeping that first contact very positive, because you want them on your team, right? You want to work with them to correct the behaviors and not it be us versus you. If the school posts something on social media, am I allowed to reshare it on my personal social media? That depends on what it is. I would think so, probably, right? I know sometimes we'll do like a fundraiser or a school fair. I don't see that being a problem. If you're worried about it, you can always check with your admin. But I think if they're posting it, I don't see a problem with it being on you reposting it. Ask if raising your voice brings you closer to a solution. That's interesting. I can see that. Okay, these are some great comments, guys. So we've gone through communication, and now we're going to talk about bullying. So first you need to know the warning signs. And I don't know, did Mr. Yazgeldi talk much about bullying in David's Law when he was talking about classroom management? Did you guys get any of that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I won't go a lot into David's Law, but I do want to go over warning signs, what it looks like. So when you have a child that is being bullied, the victim may seem quiet or depressed. They may have bruises or other injuries, have headaches, stomach aches, or trouble sleeping. I have trouble sleeps, but trouble sleeping. Have missing or damaged belongings, lose interest in school or do poorly in school. They may avoid certain places, like they may not want to go to the restroom. They may not want to go out in the hallway, places where their bully may be. They may seem anxious or upset after using the internet. So if you see any of these warning signs, it's really important that you report this or talk to the kid, right? There's different things that you can do with it. We now have a student assistance form, which is called a SAF. And what that does is that sends a message directly. Hopefully you have a counselor on campus. If you have a counselor on campus, that's great. If not, it'll go to your dean of students, because these are signs of bullying, but there's also signs of abuse. This also could be sign of suicidal ideation. All of these things could be signs the child is being trafficked. So these are all warning signs for a multitude of things. So unless you know that it's because another kid is bullying them, I would still refer this kid. I'm worried about this kid's behaviors, right? I would turn that SAP in and they can determine it. Now, if you have a great relationship with this kid, you could say, hey, I'm a little worried about you. What's going on? And they tell you or not, or, you can infer by the conversation that they're being bullied, then you have to report that bullying immediately. Because as Mr. Asgelli talked about, David's Law requires us to investigate that as quickly as possible. But you also need to be able to identify a bully, right? So children who bully others may enjoy putting others down and or not care about others' feelings, need to have power over others, use others to get what they want, disrespect authority and people who are different from them, disregard rules, trying to hide what they're doing online or with their cell phones. This would be in the case of cyberbullying. Have an attitude of superiority. Also, one of the things I didn't put on here is a lot of times our kids that bully are also bullied or have been bullied. You have a kid that's bullying other kids, they're probably getting bullied at home by a parent, by an older sibling, by a cousin. So while we want to address this, we may not always go to the full-on punishment stage, right? Whenever we do bully investigations, yes, they're going to get in trouble because you're not supposed to bully, but we also want to put supports in place for this kid afterwards to choose appropriate behaviors. So what do you do if you suspect bullying is occurring? I have this. If you see something, say something. Don't just say, someone else will take care of it, right? You're part of the problem when you do that. There's a lot of research and a lot of talk about bystanders. People that are bystanders tend to increase bullying. They tend to be the one that actually makes all the situations worse because they're allowing it to happen and they're not stepping in, they're not saying anything, they're not reporting it. And by not reporting it, you're making the situation keep going. So step in. Do not ignore this behavior. Teachers ignoring the situation often encourage bullying to continue as they do not see consequences. It also discourages victims, causing them to believe no one cares. Report it. Tell your dean, tell your principal, tell your counselor. State law requires campuses to investigate all bullying claims, regardless of where the incident occurred. So that means that if someone comes to you, and I know Yazgelli already told you this, but I'm going to tell you this again. If someone comes to you and says, after school, I was contacted via social media by this person and they told me that I should just go kill myself, right? That is bullying. That is considered cyberbullying. It didn't happen on campus, but it was reported to you. And because it was reported to you, then we need to let the dean know and they will start the investigation, okay? And prevent. Make sure you set expectations in your classroom. Let your students know that this type of behavior will not be tolerated. Inform students of how and to whom they can report this type of behavior to. Okay, so it's really important that you let your students know that, we will respect each other at all times. There will be no bullying in my classroom, whatever that looks like. And then how to report it, right? We have anonymous reporting on our website that they can go in and they can fill out a form to report bullying. A lot of the deans will have boxes outside of their office where someone can drop in bullying reports. They have to know that we care about them. So if something has happened to you, please let us know and we will handle it as soon as possible. Okay. So now a case study. So Jack tells his teacher that Tommy has been picking on him. Both boys tend to be quite aggressive towards each other, so the teacher tells Jack just ignore him. The following day, Jack approaches the teacher again and states that Tommy is being a bully. Again, the teacher feels that both boys are picking on each other, so she dismisses the accusation. Later that day, the boys get into a violent fight. When Jack's parents arrive, they tell the administration that Jack has been reporting bullying to the teacher. They state that this has been happening for a while, and with their encouragement, Jack finally reported this to the teacher, who dismissed him. When confronted, the teacher states that boys will be boys, and she doesn't consider it to be a big deal. Are the teacher's actions acceptable? I see some head shakes. No, no, absolutely. Good. I see lots and lots of no's. Right. Do not ignore. Oops, that's a serious mistake. Right. Don't ignore it. Boys will be boys has been that's been an excuse for a long time to just leave things, let them be, right? It's too much. I don't want to handle it. Boys will be boys. They'll figure it out, right? In the meantime, she's destroying all trust that she had with Jack. Jack went to her and said, I need help, and she dismissed it, right? We have to help. So what should the teacher have done here? Report to the dean? Absolutely. Report. Yeah. Report it. The teacher should address the issue first time the student. Yeah, absolutely. Track his behavior and report it. I love that. A write-up. Yeah. So whenever she saw it starting, she should have stepped in immediately and said, this is not acceptable. Because she did not step in that first time, she let it go on. And then when she let it go on, and then when he said, I need help, she ignored it again. So she should have first set her expectations. There will be no bullying in my classroom. We will treat each other with respect. And then when she saw that Tommy started picking on Jack, she should have stepped in and said, this is not acceptable. We're not going to do this. She could have even called Tommy's parents and said, hey, I've noticed that he is not having he's picking on another one. He's not having a good positive interaction with another student. Can you help me figure out what's going on? Why? Do you know is there something going on with them? Do they have a history of not getting along? Kind of find out a little bit more about it. And then, yeah, absolutely tell the dean. Tell the dean right away. So now we come to Child Protective Services. And I know this is a scary one, and a lot of times we don't like to report because we don't want to cause more problems for the kid. But we are mandatory reporters, meaning that if we suspect abuse, we are obligated by the law to report. If we do not report, they can take our license. There's just no need not to report, right? If a kid needs help, a kid needs help. The state just passed, so used to we had 48 hours to report, and they just in this last legislative session changed it to 24. I don't know why you would ever wait longer than 24 hours to report when you feel a child's being abused anyway, but now it's quicker. So you have to report within 24 hours. So our reporting obligation is anyone who suspects that a child has been or may be abused or neglected has a legal responsibility under state law for reporting the suspected abuse or neglect to law enforcement or to the Department of Family and Protective Services. Reports may be made by contacting one of the following. And here's the Texas Abuse Hotline, or in non-emergency situations, you can fill out the online form. If it's something that you think is imminent, like you have a kid that says screaming, I don't want to go home, I'm afraid to go home, we'll call the local police department. Your deans will help with all of this, but it's important for you to know, if you suspect child abuse, you do not have to go to admin and say, I'm reporting. You can just report. The state law says you are an obligated reporter. If I had a teacher that came to me and said, I think this kid's being abused, I would say, then you need to do a report. don't depend on your dean to do it. They didn't see the abuse. They don't know what you saw. You need to report it. I always recommend calling the hotline, simply because you actually talk to a person, especially if you're not sure, right? If there's a kid, I'll give you an example. I had a student that um, she just wasn't coming to school. Her mom would call us to see if she showed up for school that day. So to me, that's a problem, right? So I called CPS and I said, hey, this is the situation. I've got a kid that's not coming. Parents are calling me to see if they're here, and talk to them about whether that was something that they would investigate or not. So they will help you with that. So I like making that phone call, especially if I'm not really sure. Like, is this abuse? Is this not abuse? They'll walk you through it. Just a heads up, that was not abuse because she had a place to come home to. Said it was bad parenting, but she had a place to come home to. It's unfortunate. Any questions about Child Protective Services or any concerns about it? We're all good. And like I said, I know a lot of times, you think that I don't want to cause a parent extra problems. I know that this parent's struggling, but if you have a kid that's coming in and they've got bruises on their face, just call, just make that phone call, let them investigate it. You will have parents say, I know you called CPS on me. They do not know that. A lot of the times, those parents that have CPS that are called on them regularly have figured out the system. They know that you're probably around the kids, so they will just assume that it was you, but CPS will never tell who called. Okay, so that should not be a fear of, I don't want to call, I don't want them to know it was me, um, because it is anonymous. Okay, they will take your name, and that's a protective thing, to prevent false reports. And so they will take your name, they will take your information, but they will not pass that on to a parent. Okay. But parents may come in and say, I know you did it. And you could just say, look, you know, you need to talk to your CPS person, not us. It could have been anyone here. All teachers and all school staff are obligated reporters. So, it could have been anyone here. You don't have to, or if you don't feel comfortable talking to them, bring your admin in. They're very good at talking to parents about that type of stuff. Okay. Um, if it's an emergency situation, you can always call 911 as well. So a case study. A student turns in their homework binder for the day, and a teacher finds a note discussing suicide. The teacher asks the student about it, but the student quickly brushes it off as just creative writing. While the note seems a little too detailed, the teacher trusts the student and does nothing. In the following days, the student has been abnormally tardy to class, and her grades are beginning to drop. The student is starting to sleep in class and does not socialize with anyone. The teacher senses something is wrong, but does not mention this concern to anyone. A week later, the student enters the classroom with her hair covering half her face. When she moves, a bruise can be seen hidden under her hair. What should the teacher do? Oh, I love that you said suicide case. That is great. We will touch on that. Definitely needs to be reported. Absolutely. Should the teacher have reported earlier and when? And I think I already saw that answer. So this creative writing, this note, we should have stopped everything right then, right? And you wouldn't do a staff for this, because a staff that's going to email the counselor, and when the counselor sees it, then they're going to. This is a suicide note, means that we need to help this kid right away. We're going to do a suicide risk assessment on your campus. If you have a student counselor, they have been trained on how to do suicide risk assessments, because there are a mental health expert on campus, right? But your dean of students also knows how to do it. Some districts, I've also trained principals and deans of academics, not all districts, but for sure your dean of student culture and your student counselor can do that suicide risk assessment. It's just 5 questions. It's very easy, but they'll reach out and they'll get help for this kid. So just because they're saying it's creative writing, maybe it is, but unless you do that risk assessment, you're not going to know that. And you're going to get into this case like this. So this went from suicide ideation, probably because of abuse. And if we'd done that risk assessment earlier, we may or may not have found out about that abuse. But at least we're starting the process to help, right? And then, of course, at any point, any of these things are indicators. Sometimes being tardy and grades beginning to drop, maybe there's something else going on, but everything tied in together before seeing that bruise, maybe we would have made that CPS call. But for sure, as soon as we see that bruise, we need to make that phone call. Okay. And so we have another one. A normally cheerful, happy student suddenly stops caring about his appearance. He stops participating in class, and he notices he is not hanging out with his friends. You ask if he is okay, and he answers he is fine and has just been tired lately. Should we do anything further? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So with this situation, do you think that it should be a CPS phone call? Not yet. I agree. We don't have any indication just from this that he's being abused at home. It might be something that we go and we have that conversation with them. Maybe someone in his family passed away, maybe he lost a pet. We have a lot of, when kids' behaviors change drastically, sometimes when they lose pets or some sort of relationships. Um, so I would fill a SAF out for this kid, right? Let's say we need some extra help and fill that SAF out. Um, in the conversation, with talking to this kid, other stuff might come out, and then we may decide, okay, we need to do a risk assessment, we need to do a report. It is absolutely okay to talk to the kid. Absolutely okay to talk to the kid. You're not counseling the kid, you're just talking to them. You're making that relationship, you're trying to figure out how you can best help them. So it is absolutely okay to talk to them. Um, and I like this, ask parents their current observation, or talk to the parents and say, I'm really concerned. Is everything going on? Is everything okay at home? Is there something that I can do to help them out? I've noticed that his demeanor's changing. He's not hanging out with the same friends. What can I do to help? Or have you noticed this as well? Right. So kind of puts everyone on track, and then we can kind of go from there. um, I see, what if a student tries to hide it? They absolutely might. At this point, it would be when I would contact our counselor and get our counselor to help with that SAF. So fill that SAF out, let them go in, and they'll call that parent as well, and see if we can get consent to start counseling. If you don't have a counselor, it might be a situation where we recommend them talk to TChat, which TChat is the free telehealth service for mental health. So for our campuses that don't have that counselor, we do have that resource available. Even for campuses with counselors, if it's something beyond the scope of what a student counselor on campus can do, we can always refer out to TChat as well. And I put here, your campus has an SSSP team. That stands for Safe and Supportive School Program Team, or threat assessment, that it says they can assist in these types of situations. And you will be trained at the beginning of the year on this from your campus expectations of the SSSP team. We also have, that's more threat assessment. And when we first started threat assessment, it was a very proactive program to kind of reach these kids that are like this. The state this past year has kind of changed those requirements and made it more reactive. So we're really only starting those big threat assessments when the kid is exhibiting extreme behaviors or they've already made comments. But in this one, we also have BRTI. We have behavioral response to intervention. So if we have a kid that we just can't get them to where they're participating, to whatever, we can put those little interventions in place, and you can track them to see if they're working. Your deans will also be training you guys on the BRTI program as well. And the idea is when we start with the kids with the BRTI, it's not a consequence based, right? No one's going to punish this poor kid for his behaviors of what he's not hanging out with friends, he's tired, he's sleeping in class or whatever. We're not going to punish them for that, but we need some sort of supports in place. That's where we can use that BRTI system. Any other questions about that? No? Okay. So before we get to the safety piece, is there any other questions regarding any of the ethics stuff that we talked about? Okay. If two students are fighting, are we allowed to physically intervene, or what is the recommended way to separate them in that situation? Is it appropriate to immediately call for help for using walkie-talkie? Absolutely. So I would be very careful. I don't want you to get punched. I don't want you to get hit. I would probably first ask for help, but if you see that the only way to go in is to restrain a child while they're fighting, you can do that. But be aware that if you have to go in and restrain, you are required by law to take, if you're in anywhere but Austin, you take CPI class. If you're in Austin, you take what's called a SOMA class, and it's basically a passive restraint de-escalation course on how to handle those types of situations. You will have a CPI or a SOMA team on your campus that hopefully you can get someone to call because they have been trained on how to safely restrain students when they're fighting. But if you can't get a hold of anyone, you're the only one there and you need to split them up, you are fine. I just don't want you guys to get hit, so be very careful. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that, you don't want to get hit, then I would just call someone as soon as possible. Just do something. You don't want to be that inactive person that just stands there like, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to sit here and yell at them and they're not going to do anything. Call for help. If you can safely intervene, then that is fine. How about if bullying from student to teacher? What are the steps from admin to take support the teacher? That is a good question. I think this is really important where we build those relationships early, right? If you get to know your kids and get to know the families, there's less likely that you're going to have bullying from student to teacher because you know them, right? But if, let's say you've made that relationship and they're still all of a sudden they're constantly going after you and stuff, we can also use that BRTI system because that's also going to be something to put those supports in place. So there's got to be a reason for that language that the kids are using towards you or whatever they're doing. There's a reason before it. There's not any inherently bad kid that's just going to go all and start bullying. There has to have been something that happened ahead of time or something that was said, or a lot of times they could be misunderstanding the content. And instead of being known for I don't understand, they're doing that because it's better to be a class clown than the kid that doesn't understand, right? I'd rather, in kids' words, I'd rather be silly than dumb, right? Of course, we never call them dumb, but that's what they feel inside. And so they're going to act up or they're going to go against you. So there's a lot of different methods we can take with that. Your deans will do a training with you with that BRTI, how to do those observations and what interventions you put in place when that starts. And then you can refer them if we need to the BRTI program, and we put stronger interventions in place from that point to help. And it also, maybe we do a restorative circle, right? Where we get together with the parents and the students and talk about what's going on. Your counselors can help with that. Most of your deans have been trained on how to do that as well. So building the relationship that way might work. I hope that answered that well. What about when the teacher is bullied by the students? Which teacher? Okay, so that's the same question. Okay, so phone use is prohibited, but what if a student secretly records or posts anything of a teacher and the teacher later finds out? What steps should the teacher take in that situation? Well, that's a great one. Phones are not just going to be prohibited. They are not allowed in school anymore. The state just changed that. So students, if they come to school, we have to take them up and we have to store them. So hopefully, if a situation where they're recording and posting, they're going to be in serious trouble. First, they violated that they're not supposed to have a phone on campus, and then they're posting things that they should not. So that's something that I would take to your admin team and say, hey, we discovered this. Sometimes with social media accounts, it's really difficult to get them to take things down because they do have protection for free speech. But you can try to report it to that social media program, I would definitely have that dean handle. Hopefully they're calling the parents or talking to the parents. They're talking to the student. If it's something that you feel that it's a violation of your personal rights, you always have the right to press charges if it's that extreme. I don't like going that route, but if it is extreme and you have that worry, you can always do that too. All right, these are great questions. So I do want to go on to safety. And I don't have a whole lot of time left, and I can talk about safety for an entire day. But I did want to talk about a few things. The first is going to be, this is what we call the SRP poster, the Standard Response Protocol. Any Harmony campus that you are on, you should see these posters. Anytime you hear any of these commands, it's the same process for all campuses, okay? So the first one we have is hold. What hold means is that you are going to keep your kids in your room. You might, if there's any kids in the hallways, you might just say, hey guys, get in here real quick, and then you're going to lock the door. You're just going to keep the kids in there and you can continue teaching, okay? So what a hold does is we usually use these, let's say we've got drug dogs on campus. We don't want kids on campus, or we don't want kids walking the halls while we're doing a drug dog sweep for multiple reasons. Some kids are allergic to dogs. Some kids are deathly afraid of dogs. Some are overly friendly with dogs, right? So we want to keep them all in the classroom, but we don't want to stop teaching. So whenever a hold is called, you just lock your door and you can keep teaching as normal. And then they will release hold, and all you have to do is unlock your door. Hopefully your door is already locked. I'll just let you guys know. I'm surprised this last legislative session, they didn't make it where classroom doors had to be locked at all times, because the safest method to protecting yourself and your kids is to always have your classroom door locked. I know it's sometimes inconvenient, especially when you have the little ones that need to go to the bathroom and stuff. I also do our ALICE training, which is our active shooter protocols, which stands for alert, lockdown, inform, counter, and evacuate. But in that training, I tell everyone that no locked door has ever been breached in a school shooting. Okay, so what that means is that in any school shooters, they've never been able to get into a locked door. Now they've shot around doors, they've shot under, they've been able to shoot through windows, but locked doors are a time barrier and they will keep you safe. Okay, keep you safer. So the next one I have is secure. And so what this is you're going to be inside the building. Okay, so if you have kids out at the playground, if you have kids at the soccer field, you're going to go into the building and we're going to lock those exterior doors. Inside the building is business as usual. You would use this if there's danger outside of the building. So let's say there's a bank robbery and we have a police chase. So we're going to lock those doors, we're going to secure them, but we can still do business as usual. The danger is outside of the school. All the kids are inside, we're good. Now, sometimes we may use multiple, let's say we have a situation where we have a standoff between police and this thief, and it's close to the campus, where if shooting started, bullets could go towards the campus. In that situation, we're going to go into secure, but we're going to move the kids out of those rooms with the windows facing them. But you guys don't have to worry about that. The deans will determine and they will let you know. I just wanted to let you know that we might do multiple things at once, okay? So secure, used to, we called this lockout, but that was getting really confusing with lockdown, so we changed it to secure. So that means, again, dangers outside the classroom or outside the school building. We're not going to let people in. We're not going to let people out. We're going to lock the doors. Everything is business as usual on the inside. Okay. The next one is lock down. This is when the danger is inside the building. Okay. If you can't evacuate the building, if let's say there is an active shooter on campus. If you have an active shooter on campus, the safest thing to do is always evacuate and get out. But if you don't have the time or means to get out of the room, you can lock it down. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to close the door, obviously lock it. You're going to make sure that everyone's away from the windows. barricade. If you can barricade means put as much stuff against that door as possible. So what you're doing again is you're building time barriers from making it where people can't get in to you. Used to, we taught everyone to kind of bunch up in the corner or hide under the desks. Now we don't do that. We have them spread out in the room and have items that if they need to throw, if someone is able to make it through your barrier, make it through your locked door, that they can throw at the person to distract them and to keep them away from them, okay? So that's when we use lockdown, okay? And it kind of tells you, I didn't really go into this, it says what to do during a lockdown: recover students from the hallway if possible, lock the classroom door, turn out the lights, move away from sight, maintain silence, do not open the door, and prepare to evade or defend, which I just said, have something in your hands that you can throw. Staying silent is really important because you don't want people to know you're in the room. And then as you're in there, you also may look for a secondary way to get out. Right? If you're on the first floor and you can break a window and get out, you might want to have to do that, right? In a real situation. Don't do this with our drills. So that leads us next one to evacuate. We do this once a month. State requires us to do fire drills once a month. So you guys will get really good at evacuating the campus. We have rally points. So whatever your dean will tell you, whenever you leave the building for a fire drill, this is where your rally point is. This is where we all stop and we meet. So in the event we have a different, let's say, again, we have an active shooter and it's safe for you to evacuate, you're going to evacuate and you're going to go to that rally point. If that rally point becomes unsafe, hopefully your dean has a different one, or we just want you guys to leave to get safe, to get to safety, okay? You may also have to evacuate for gas leaks. That one may be a little bit different. You're not going to hear it over the intercom. You may have them come to your classroom individually to say, hey, we need to get out because of gas leaks, that type of thing. And then shelter, we have multiple types of shelter. You have weather, which weather could mean severe storms. It could mean tornado. Those are the two big ones. Or you may have hazmat. Okay, so shelter for storms, it's going to be all different. For weather. So for a storm, you may get away from the windows. That's the big thing. Get away from the windows. If you have a room that's got windows on all sides, maybe you change rooms. Tornado, you're going to go into the hallways. There's a certain stance that the kids get in for tornadoes. If you're in the Dallas area, that's a little bit different because you guys have storm shelters. I think most of the gyms there are storm shelters that you will go to, but your dean will instruct you on that. If it's shelter for hazmat, you're going to seal the room. So if you have a room with operable windows, we're going to either seal that or evacuate to a room that doesn't have windows because hazmat, the idea is that there's been a spill outside of the campus and we're keeping those fumes from coming in. So that was a very, very quick safety. I know that I am right at time, so I want to make sure and respect the time that I'm given. But if you have any questions, my email is here and I try to be as responsive as possible. So you guys feel free to email me with any additional questions. You will get extra training on all those safety things, but I just wanted to kind of point that out to you to let you know what to expect. I see a hand raised. Mr. Hamzaev, did I say that right?
Yes, can you? I'm sorry for the echo.
It's all right.
We are in the same room, that's why. Just a quick question. As you say, all students are equal. It might be right question or not. How about those students in some classes, they have honored class and normal class?
Mm-hmm.
Someone asked me about this, but I couldn't understand. Is it like a discrimination or not?
No, that wouldn't be considered, that wouldn't be discrimination because they're getting additional teaching, right? They had to qualify to be into that. So it would not be considered discrimination, right? So like in order for me to be in an honors class, I have to work hard enough to get these certain grades. I am being promoted, I'm not being demoted, right? So even, and I guess you could even look at that with SPED, right? We put them in SPED classes, not separate, not saying, oh, you guys can't do it. And we're giving everyone the same coursework. We're just saying, you guys are SPED, you guys are here. We're giving you all the same coursework, we just want you separate. They're getting extra supports. So we're working everyone to keep elevating. And so that helps it for it's not considered discrimination because